Hi, third grade poets. Today we're going to be interpreting and analyzing another poem. This poem is called Clouds, and it's written by the poet Christina Rossetti, who lived from 1830 to 1894. Clouds. White sheep, on a blue hill. When the wind stops, you all stand still. When the wind blows, you walk away slow. White sheep, where do you go? So I'm going to stop after this first read and think about the gist, or what this poem was all about. Well, the title of this poem is called Clouds. But the poem does not mention clouds at all. Instead, the poem mentions white sheep. I'm going to read again because I want to dig a little bit deeper into this. White sheep, on a blue hill. When the wind stops, you all stand still. When the wind blows, you walk away slow. White sheep, where do you go? Are you thinking that this poem is actually about sheep? Did the author make a mistake when she titled it Clouds? I think I'm making a connection. Do you notice the element of poetry repetition in this poem? Do you notice how the author repeats white sheep 4 times? I'll go ahead and I'll highlight those 4 times where the author says white sheep. Now, have you ever been outside on a warm, sunny day and laid on your back looking up at the clouds? Have you ever played that game with a friend where you try to picture what you see in the clouds? So maybe you noticed a dog, maybe you noticed a hippo. Well, I think that this poet is trying to compare clouds with fluffy white sheep. When poets use comparisons like this, that's called a metaphor, comparing two things that are not alike, but making them connected in some way. When I think of white sheep, I think of fluffy sheep, fluffy animals, right? And I can actually imagine the clouds looking like the fluffy back of a sheep. That's called a metaphor, when an author compares unlike things. So our metaphor in this poem is where the author's comparing clouds to white sheep. By the author using that comparison, it's also creating imagery for the reader. Remember, imagery is an element of poetry that creates a picture in the reader's mind. So as I'm reading this, I'm picturing white sheep. Another place where the author creates imagery in my mind is here, on a blue hill. I'm thinking that the blue hill is actually the sky, because just like she's using white sheep instead of clouds, I think she's using blue hill instead of sky. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read this poem one more time because so far I've found imagery, I've found metaphors, I've also found repetition. I'm going to go ahead and dig a little bit deeper to see if I can find any other elements of poetry. Maybe I can find some rhymes. Maybe I can find something else. Let's dig a little deeper. White sheep, on a blue hill. When the wind stops, you all stand still. When the wind blows, you walk away slow. White sheep, where do you go? When we think about this poem having white sheep in the poem, we can actually imagine them walking and standing still. But it's kind of funny when we realize that this poet is actually talking about clouds. Since she's actually talking about clouds, which are not humans, they are not people, she's using personification when she says things like the white sheep or the clouds are standing still. We know that clouds can't stand. That's using personification. She also says that when the wind blows, they walk away slow. That's more personification. It's making these clouds sound like living things by comparing them to sheep. I also notice in this poem that there is only one stanza. Remember, a stanza is kind of like a paragraph in a poem. It's how many sections make up a poem. So this poem has one stanza. Okay, so far, let's talk about what we found. I'm going to go ahead and write them in my handy dandy text box. Okay, so we have found metaphors. We have found imagery. We have found repetition. We've also thought about the stanza, and we know that there's only one stanza. We've also found personification.